Resuming debate. Reprise de débat. The Honourable Member for Spadina Harbourfront.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak in strong support of Bill C-16, the Protecting Victims Act. I do so as a woman and as someone who has spent years listening to women, survivors, and frontline advocates describe the gap between their lived realities and the protections our laws have provided. When I was 13 years old, I was given a rape whistle. It was a quiet but unmistakable signal that my presence in the world came with a risk and that my safety was ultimately my own responsibility to manage. Nearly 30 years later, much has changed. We have a deeper understanding of gender-based violence, of power, control, and harm. We speak more openly about experiences that were once pushed into silence. And yet, for far too many women and girls, violence remains a daily part of their reality. Before I speak about statutes and sections of the criminal code, I want to speak about a young person whose experience illustrates exactly why this bill matters. She was 16 years old. She thought she was in a relationship. What she did not have, what she did not yet have was language. Excuse me. Let me do that again. What she did not yet have language for was that she was being controlled. Her boyfriend decided who she could speak to, where she could go, what she should wear, how quickly she was expected to respond to messages. When she resisted, he did not always hurt her directly. Instead, he was violent towards others in her life so that he could intimidate and isolate her. While there was no physical evidence she could point to, what she understood very well was the constant escalating fear. No single incident clearly met the threshold for legal intervention, and there was not a system that could yet name what was happening to her, let alone stop it from happening. Her story is not rare, it is painfully familiar. Intimate partner violence and gender-based violence are not new problems in Canada. This government and the minister understands this reality, and the provisions in Bill C-16 address what has been legislatively absent in our response to gender-based violence and intimate partner violence. In 2024 alone, 187 women were killed in this country. One woman killed every 2 days. Behind each statistic is a life ended too soon, a family broken needlessly, and a community changed forever. As this bill makes clear, violence does not begin with a punch. It does not begin with a final act of femicide. It begins much earlier with fear, with control, with threats, with isolation, with humiliation, and with the slow erosion of a person's autonomy. For far too long, the legal system has struggled to name that reality, let alone to respond to it. Survivors have told us time and time again that the law intervenes too late. By the time physical violence appears, the warning signs have long been there. The system asks them to wait for bruises, for broken bones, for tragedy, and then, perhaps even not then, are they offered justice. Bill C-16 exists because waiting is no longer acceptable. This legislation recognizes that intimate partner violence and gender-based violence are systemic problems that require systemic responses from the federal government. It recognizes that technology and the digital world have changed how harm occurs, and it recognizes that justice delayed or denied re-traumatizes survivors and erodes public trust in our judicial system. Criminal justice is, of course, a shared responsibility. Provinces must adequately resource courts, victim services, crown prosecutors, and the police. And the federal government has a clear responsibility to modernize and enact criminal law, precisely what Bill C-16, the Protecting Victims Act, seeks to do. Mr. Speaker, since this bill has been introduced, it has been carefully studied at committee, where members have heard from survivors, advocates, legal experts, and law enforcement. Bill C-16 is one of the most significant updates to Canada's criminal justice system in a generation. While broad in scope, its purpose is clear: to intervene earlier, respond more effectively, and protect those at greatest risk. First, the bill creates a new criminal code offence for coercive and controlling conduct in intimate relationships. This is a critical shift. Coercive control reflects how abuse actually operates through monitoring, isolation, financial control, threats, and intimidation. It enables police and courts to intervene before violence escalates to lethal outcomes. This will save women's lives. Second, C-16 strengthens how the law treats the most serious forms of violence against women. Murder committed in the context of coercive control, sexual violence, exploitation, trafficking, or hate will be treated as first-degree murder. Where a killing in those same circumstances results in a manslaughter conviction, courts will be required to consider life imprisonment with parole ineligibility comparable to second-degree murder. Sentencing must reflect the gravity of violence rooted in power and control. Third, the bill modernizes our response to criminal harassment and stalking. Survivors will no longer be required to prove subjective fear. Courts will instead assess whether the conduct could reasonably be expected to cause someone to believe their safety is threatened. This trauma-informed shift recognizes that harassment is cumulative and that early intervention saves lives. Fourth, Bill C-16 updates sexual exploitation offenses to reflect the digital world we all live in. We know that technology is not neutral infrastructure. It is increasingly used as a tool to manipulate, monitor, and harm women and gender-diverse people. While the non-consensual distribution of intimate images is already illegal, this bill clarifies the law and explicitly includes sexual deepfakes, closing a gap that offenders are already exploiting. Committee amendments strengthen these provisions further. The bill now explicitly captures a broader range of AI-generated images, ensuring the law keeps pace with rapidly evolving technologies and the realities of online harm. A digital violation is still a violation, and the law must say so clearly. Fifth, the bill strengthens protections for children, both offline and online. It expands child luring offenses, criminalizes child sextortion, addresses grooming tactics involving explicit material, restores and reinforces mandatory minimum penalties for serious child sexual offenses with a constitutional safety valve, and requires online platforms to preserve evidence longer so offenders cannot escape accountability. Finally, Bill C-16 has been informed through a victim-centered and trauma-informed lens. It strengthens the Canadian Victim Bill of Rights, improves access to information and testimonial aids, clarifies the right to present impact statements, and modernizes procedures. So serious cases are less likely to collapse due to delay. Together, these reforms bring the criminal code into alignment with lived experience, modern technology, and the urgent need for prevention. This bill is grounded in evidence and what many advocates have called for years. Women's organizations across the country have welcomed the criminalization of coercive control as a long overdue step. Frontline organizations working with survivors have described this bill as historic, recognizing that patterns of control are deeply harmful and that survivors deserve stronger legal protections. Child protection advocates have warned that online sexual violence against children has reached unprecedented levels. They have welcomed the provisions in this bill that strengthen online child protection. As this debate has unfolded, some misinformation has followed. Let me address a few of these myths directly. Criminalizing coercive control is not untested. It reflects years of research, survivor testimony, and expert input. It represents the hard work that went into Bill C-332, sponsored by former NDP MP Laurel Collins, which received cross-party support at committee. This government is not only now criminalizing the distribution of intimate images. That offense already exists. Bill C-16 clarifies that it includes sexual deepfakes, closing a gap offenders are already exploiting. And Bill C-16 does protect children online. It expands child luring and sextortion offenses. And as a mother of 2 young kids, I know how important this change will be. These are not symbolic measures. They are targeted, enforceable, and urgently needed. Mr. Speaker, Bill C-16 is a vital pillar of our response to gender-based violence, but it is not the entire solution. Legislation alone cannot change culture. It cannot house a woman fleeing violence. It cannot staff a crisis line at 3 in the morning. It cannot replace the trust built by frontline workers who walk along survivors every day. That crucial work is done by the incredible frontline organizations across this country. This bill must be understood alongside continued federal investment in women's shelters, transitional housing, legal aid, trauma counseling, and prevention programs. This work must be in concert with a national action plan to end gender-based violence with provincial and territorial partners, Indigenous nations, and local organizations. Ending gender-based violence requires culture change in how we understand power, entitlement, masculinity, and control. Mr. Speaker, Bill C-16 reflects years of advocacy, hard conversations, and courage, and in particular from survivors who spoke when it was extremely difficult to speak up. It recognizes harm earlier so that systems can intervene faster. It treats victims with dignity while modernizing our justice system to meet the realities Canadians are living with today. These changes might have made a difference for the 13-year-old handed a whistle instead of protection, and for the 16-year-old unable to name coercion. They will make a difference for the women who have lived in silence and for all children who deserve safety. I urge all members of this House to support Bill C-16, the Protecting Victims Act, and to continue the work beyond this chamber that our country deserves and demands. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well done. Well done.